That 1996, Prince Charles and Princess Diana got divorced. More than 4% of the UK population got internet access. Mića Popovic, Serbian painter, died. And I moved to London and officially became a British Serb. My name is Maja Jordan. I was born in Belgrade, and my love for music led me to become a classical pianist. My other passion is promoting Serbia and Serbian culture, so I joined Serbian Council of Great Britain when it was founded in 2004 and have been an active member ever since. In the unusual circumstances in which we find ourselves in 2020, instead of self-isolating, the Serbian Council invites you to connect and share your story with others. We have different life experiences, but we have one thing in common. We were either born in Serbia or born in Britain but have Serbian origins, or are connected with Serbia in some way. So, what is your story? Let's find out what a couple story will reveal. Welcome! Dobrodošli na Čašicu razgovora. 100th anniversary of the Great War was commemorated with many events around the world in recent years. Serbia was in the spotlight at the time as war has started by Austria-Hungary announcing, declaring the war on Kingdom of Serbia. And now, 100 years after, a part of remembering the bravery of Serbian people and Serbian soldiers, we are facing a slightly different battle with media and rewriting the history that is happening nowadays to suit political situation at the present time. Our guest today is Zvezdana Popovic, the lady that is very much admired and appreciated by the Serbian community in Britain for her determination and dedication to keep memory of brave people in Serbia alive from First World War. On the other side, it's also a fight to keep memory of British women especially that went to Serbia and fought together with Serbian people for the same cause. Zvezdana, thank you very much for coming today. Can you please tell us how your story started in former Yugoslavia and how it happened that you came to Britain afterwards?
Hello, Maya. Thank you very much for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. I came to Britain, to London, on 6th of October 1992, so almost 28 years ago. Before that, I lived in Osijek in Yugoslavia and had relatives in Croatia, in Bosnia, in Serbia. And I was brought up as Yugoslav and appreciated the brotherhood of men, and we are all equal, and had Serbs and Croats friends. And so when I was in my late 20s, I started to question what was actually true in my happy childhood that I thought I had. And some things that I didn't understand when I was a kid, I quite well understood just before the war or when the war started in Croatia. The most important event in my childhood was actually the death of my mother. She was not yet 37, she died. And 3 of us left. I was the eldest one, and my father didn't remarry. So life was quite hard, quite difficult. And with all those chores and problems and issues that I had to, that I was faced with, I was happiest when I had chance to study, to read books, and I could say that books saved me. When I thought backwards what actually I knew about myself and my relatives and my religion was really, really strange. For example, I didn't understand when I was a kid, and every 1st of January, we would go to see my grandparents to Bosnia, to Derventa. And for a child from town, why did we have to go when it's the coldest time, when we could just wait 2 more weeks for winter holidays and then spend enough days? Because nobody told us that actually our Krstna Slava was Sveti Ignatije on 2nd of January. And although at that time none of 3 of us of the kids were christened, I was christened here in our St. Sava's church, and Father Milan actually christened me and my daughter together. So I didn't understand what was happening in my childhood about that. We didn't know even that my parents had a secret church wedding, because they were not allowed to have proper one.
Yeah.
And then it was completely different how you, or what you were allowed to do in Croatia, in Osijek, if you Catholic or if you were actually Orthodox Serb. So these things really influenced my later life, because I realized that many things that I thought were nice and good was actually false. So we had to hide who we were at that time. I remember when I was 8 years old, my mother was working in school as a teacher, and I was also in the same school in year 2, primary school. And my teacher, whom I really liked, all children liked their teachers, I could say, at that age, she asked me what was my mom cooking. And I said that it was that we had yesterday, that we had fish. It was, yesterday was 6th of January, so it was Banya. Yes, and my mother got into big trouble because she was observing Orthodox religion and doing something against the rules. And there are more of stories like that that not necessarily I understood when I was a child, but I realized that much later. You can't influence and go backwards. What actually happened is happened already.
Yeah.
But I was committed to, when the war started in 1991, I already had a fantastic year before that, and I jokes for some time that the war started because of me, because it was so. In 1990, I got my finally I got my permanent job. I passed the driving test and bought a car. I got pregnant, and in January 91, I got my daughter. And at that moment, I really thought that there's nobody happier than me. And I was planning for the brilliant future.
Yes,
So,
that's good one.
yes. So, when in July, the war started in Osijek and around Osijek, when we had to leave, and pretending or trying to believe that everything will be sorted out in a month or 2, we first went to Hungary, to Harkan, which is just half an hour by car from Osijek. Spending a lot of money, coming back again, coming back. So for 2 months was really going and leaving, trying to see if we could stay in Osijek. We couldn't, but whereas all the others returned to town from January, February, we couldn't. So although I was on maternity leave with a baby. I was still employed in secondary school. I was working as a teacher of literature and language. Although everything was according to rules, it was not, because according to rules, we were Serbs and we were supposed to leave or die, just be removed from the town. I was quite stubborn, and I thought that if I didn't do anything against the rules, that I would be able to regain my flat back, my job back, my documents, but that was not the case. So after I was arrested by Croatian army officers, army police, although I was civilian and I was with a child on my lap, I couldn't really comprehend how that was possible, but it was possible. And they produced a written statement that I was harassing Croatian widow. I just realized that it's better for me if I can leave and survive than fight and just disappear. So basically, we decided, I with my daughter, to come here, and we arrived, and still not quite sure for how long we will stay, whether we will be granted leave to remain, whether we will be sent back on the next flight. So, but I really felt safe when we came to London, and tried the best to establish new life.
Yeah, your Serbian background obviously made a huge impact on your life in Croatia because of the war happening at the time. But what about Britain? Has your background influenced it a bit better, and how you felt when you came to Britain afterwards? As you said, you started feeling at first safe, and then after that?
Yes, well, first of all, with my education, especially literature and art, I was in position to be in London 6 months or 10 or year or longer. I didn't know. But I tried to make sure that at least if they send me back after 6 months, I would be able to say that I saw all the major galleries and museums and whatever is interesting and important to know and see, not only from the tourist point of view, but from somebody who learned and read a lot about it.
Yeah, like long extended holiday, if you can call it that.
Yes. So, well, far from a holiday, because we were really struggling with that reduced income support that we were getting over there. And bed and breakfast meant really just a bottle of milk and one loaf of bread. So it was quite hard. But I would put with my daughter a bottle of water, banana, croissant, something, and we will be all day long visiting and going around and seeing London and enjoying in sense. Trying to, trying to make and get the best what is in front of us.
Yeah,
I try to be positive.
Yeah, that's what I would say. When you come from a situation that you had in Croatia and things start to be better, we start to change point of view on life in general, usually after big struggling before. And then you have been very much involved in World War I. But when your interest about World War I and about being in foreign missions started at all? Is it from visiting these museums, or it was deeply inside you?
Well, when I came here, my first intention was to translate my diplomas and to work again as a teacher. And I saw that there was a really huge interest and need for that. There was also possibilities. School of Slavonic Languages needed a professional over there. So I had my postgraduate studying from Zagreb and my graduation degree from Osijek. So I had qualifications, but after what we experienced, I just could not neglect my 2 years old daughter or 3 years old daughter later on and just commit to my future career. So I tried to balance and to learn more through working in primary schools with her as teaching assistant. And I was really, really, I can say, touched when I got the first job as a part-time teaching assistant in her primary school. And then I worked for Westminster for 7 years and realized that if you want to help your child to achieve the most, if you don't have enough money to pay for private tutors and private schools, you go to state school, but you make sure that you are the tutor that your child needs and supports. So I was very much involved in education and learned a lot hands-on, what English people would say, from experience, and tried later on to help many of other people in our community. So volunteering, working part-time at school, working as volunteer for 5 years. I worked in Serbian church school, and so all these jobs and gave me opportunity to learn more about the life here, and I supported my daughter through her education, and she did quite well. What was interesting that at the end of 1990s, when I saw how actually the war in Yugoslavia was misrepresented, I felt really badly about it. Then when we had, I decided, because of my volunteering in museums and galleries, I decided to try second master's, and that was museums and galleries in education at the Institute of Education. It was interesting and for me quite challenging, but it was actually one of the modules talking about not only galleries and museums in usual terms and that masters, but more about how any historic house, concentration camp, or a monument in different land can talk about someone's history. And for one of these modules, for heritage, I went to Corfu with my daughter and decided to write about Serbian monuments, about Serbian heritage on Corfu. And it was quite interesting. I can tell you, it was eye-opening, not only for me, but for my child as well, and for my colleagues at the university who didn't know, and my tutors who didn't know and didn't want to know anything about it. Yeah.
I guess so. That's the place that we all go back to Vrbovan, because I remember visiting that place with my father, who really wanted to go there, and I was keen to see it, but not in that terms as it meant to him. But it's very impressive and very heart-touching, especially going on the video. And I always remember my father that always when we talk about Vrbovan, it was tearing his eyes and even kind of laughing, making joke, not serious one about it. But the place is really, really special. And we should really go to see it if we have a chance to do it. Then we're coming to this topic about, as you mentioned, about the schools in Britain, about program they're learning, about the First World War, because now was obviously very much of interest. And Serbian parents do face problem there because we are really questioning the accuracy of the facts that our children are learning in the schools. And that Serbs are called terrorists at the moment, causing the First World War, and then children come home complaining that their friends are calling them Serbian terrorists and all this. So that's a big issue that some people are fighting by complaining to the schools. They have been successful on some point, even in America and here. But on the other side, we are fighting differently, just trying to teach our children the real facts, I guess.
Yes, yeah. That is very, very good point, Maya. When I read different books about the Great War, and I realized that in 1980s, the attitude was different from today's. So in books, even when they were studying battles in secondary schools, battles during the Great War, because the first two battles won by Allied forces were Battle of Cer and Kolubara. So Kolubara battle was actually studied in schools for Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4 history. That will be GCSE or before GCSE, but not anymore. Then when I read about scholarship hospitals, again, it was in all the books stated how everybody knew what they did in Serbia, but nobody knew what they did in France. And I was asking myself, no, nobody knows what they did in Serbia, because in the last 10 or 15 years, they have been actually neglected. And when I checked the curriculum in secondary schools, and because I'm working in Kensington and Chelsea libraries, I checked what kind of books children on primary school and secondary school and adults can find in libraries. You cannot find a book which will tell positive or more complex information about the First World War and the role of Serbia, or about typhus, or about that retreat over Albanian mountains, or about Salonika front. Nothing apart from Gavrilo Princip, who is now branded as Serbian terrorist, and guilty for all these crimes and all these millions of people who died during the Great War. So and nobody knows how many hundreds of thousands of people in Serbia died. Yeah. And that if you compare the population of Serbia, and if you compare the people who died, that will be the nation who was the worst, actually, in the whole Great War. The most people who died, especially how many men? Half of the men population from 18 to 60 died in the Great War. And that is just completely neglected. And I hoped when the centenary will start in 2014, that everybody will start, proper historians, to talk properly how it was and what actually happened. And then I realized that again, politics is playing games. And I was in a situation very similar to my good friend Scott Alan Cumming, who, okay, he is a landscape artist. I'm not landscape artist, but I was not historian. That if you don't do the work, and if you don't organize the talks and show people what was happening, nobody else will do. So this is how I started to actually I had to find the modus how to invite people and how to have the talks in my libraries without causing troubles. Now, that's maybe funny or easy for somebody else, but my first event was in Kensington Central Library when I invited Louise Miller to come and talk about Flora Sands. So Flora Sands is a famous British woman who was the only former officer in anybody's army. What people don't know in England, and what my managers didn't know or were not aware when I was pushing that event, that actually my exhibition, which will accompany Louise Miller's talk, and her talk about Flora Sands would be 95% about Serbia, because Flora was in Serbian army.
Yeah.
And my exhibition was actually, apart from first panel, all about Serbia and Scottish hospitals and everything else that was happening there. When it was accepted and nobody complained afterwards, I just got the feeling that I was encouraged. Yes, yeah. I could do it.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is that way that sometimes our energy comes from injustice and from truth that has to be said by at least by us if others are not saying it. So that gives us the special energy that you obviously have, because since then you've been driving force to talk about first of all in Serbia about connection between British and Serbian women and soldiers, and sometimes we do that how we say in Serbia, uinat. So that's one of the points which is maybe good characteristic, although on the other side it's not so good.
Yeah.
That means in spite of circumstances.
When I visited Corfu for the first time, I went there several times, but the first time was in 2005, and I knew what I could expect about the Serbian army and civilian and what happened, and I was aware about Mausoleum and Vido and Serbian House. What I didn't know was actually that all these women, British women, Scottish hospitals, Flora Sands, women from America, from New Zealand, from Australia, from Canada. We had to think that British at that moment was much wider term, because these British women were under the British monarchy at that empire at that time. So we have brave women from New Zealand, from Australia, from Canada, who were part of that. So not only English ladies from South England, but Scottish ladies first, Irish from Wales and everywhere. Then studying more about it, I realized that there is some kind of way that people who are in one group will celebrate only those women and neglect the others. I felt that would be really not only not fair, but it would be, how can I say, wrong.
Yeah.
It would be, because if we think about women in 1915 in Serbia, and you have January, February, March, when several of them died, and they belong to different groups and different hospitals, different organizations, why I would mention only one group and neglect the other one? And not only that, Nadezhda Petrovic died the same month as Mabel Demer or any other of these women that I was writing about. So I just saw they were all together in that. And it was so inspiring that I thought that Okay, I could not fight people in Croatia in 1991, 1982, not successfully, although I tried, because Branimir Glavaš and Šeks and Petar Kljajić were much bigger than me in that time and now as well. And but I really wholeheartedly thought that I could fight for Elsie Inglis, for Milunka Savić, for Assange, for Ljuša Petrović, for Dragomira Bjelić. So all of them, just to keep the memory about them alive.
Yeah. Seems that also in England, I'm not sure, Britain generally, how much people are aware of these women. We know that they brought the rights for women, and the position of the woman at that time in England was very, very different. That they haven't been involved in the public life so much. So they part of that part. I'm not sure how much they know about how many went to Serbia and how much they sacrificed in the Serbia.
They didn't know much about it, and on one side we have these archives and centers with loads of documents from 1914, 15, 18, and so on. Documents that were not collected here by the Serbs, but by these women from different medical organizations and groups. And you have thousands and thousands of documents, but nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
If you don't have an event or talk, and if it is not included in a curriculum for history, everybody will just skim over it like they never existed. You cannot speak about Dr. Elsie Inglis, about her heroic deeds, if you don't speak where she was. And she was in Serbia.
Yeah.
So to actually not to speak positively about the Serbian role in Great War, you have to ignore these women as well.
Yeah.
So at the end, my conclusion was that to keep a memory of us, of our memory of Serbian civilians and soldiers and Serbian role in the Great War alive and properly presented, we have to keep the memory of these women also properly presented. And to think about who they were and when where did they go? Were they only on French front or Salonika front, in Serbia, or where? So when out of all these, I'm now jumping from subject to subject, but from all these women in the medical missions who were in Serbia and on the other fronts, my favorite one has to be Dr. Elsie Inglis. She was the woman who was almost 50 when the war started. She had the idea of organizing a hospital which would be completely staffed by women, from doctors, orderlies, nurses, cooks, administration, ambulance drivers, everybody. And she offered that kind of help to War Office in Edinburgh. And she was sent home famously by saying, "My dear lady, go home and sit still." She was not the type of person. So basically, she decided really stubbornly, but qualified stubbornly, not just smashing windows and slashing the portraits in the art gallery, for goodness sake, but doing something properly. And she showed that the idea of creating these hospitals, sending them through the Allies wherever they are needed the most. She did not know that she would be sent the biggest number of hospitals to Serbia at that moment. So she's just thinking about the hospitals, and there is a really, really good quote when she's talking about and sending the letter to Millicent Fawcett, saying that men usually like to oversee what women can do, but these work in hospitals on the fronts would be something that they would not be able to miss, because they would do the same work, and what they can do better is to economize or to do this and that. So she wanted to show what women are capable of through their committed work in the worst possible and the most difficult situations. So she is the proper woman from my point of view, who knows, who fought for deeds, not words, but deeds, proper deeds, not burning St. Martin's in the fields, bombing that, or something like that.
Yeah, it's always so inspiring to hear how strong those women were. Now it's easier to be strong woman in modern society of feminism, but in those times it was pretty difficult.
Yes, it was very difficult, and they sent first hospital to France, to Ramon Abbey at the end of 1914, December, and the first one went to Kragujevac in January 1915. At the same time, there was about 5 or 6 different organizations at hospitals in Serbia. Amongst them was our church's favorite one, Lady Paget, who was in Niš, and she was a fantastic, brilliant lady who did great work. Then there was Mabel Stobbart. Mabel Stobbart with her group of women from Dorset and that part of England actually went together with the army and with civilians over the mountains of Montenegro and Albania to the Albanian coast. So she survived with all her members. So they are all contributing in some sense. There are about 1,500 of Scottish Women's Hospital members, and about between 600 and 1,000 who were in Serbia and on related fronts. It's not only on Corfu and Vida, but Salonika front, Thessaloniki as well, and then it was on Corsica, on Malta. They didn't have hospital in Malta and Corsica for other people, but for refugees who survived that trek over Albanian mountains. And they were nursed in Corsica and in Malta by these Scottish hospitals. Dr. Else Inglis died in 1917, and just one day after returning from her mission. And so I tried my best to...
You are the heroine of the modern times, obviously, because you are not really working under some organization. You are an individual who is putting all this effort, and finding funds for any events, it's very difficult. So how you'll be managing to do all that on your own, really? Do you have any support, or how it works in your case?
Yes, the first time when I went to Edinburgh, first to go there, I would not be paid. I had to take from my work in library annual leave and pay for myself for the conference. And over there, it was a conference about women in different wars, and I saw that one of the participants would be Louise Miller, talking about Flora Sands. So I was so excited to meet her, and she, for the first coffee break, when I approach with my badge with name on, you know, and Zvezdana is not very difficult to notice. She said, "Oh, I know you are the Serb." So it was really interesting, and she agreed to come only for the expenses, for travel expenses. And although I have a very modest, small two-bedroom flat, all my guests were actually my guests.
Yeah.
Because if I first went to ask who will sponsor this, I was afraid that I would not move from the starting point.
Yeah. And your events now became regular events in the Serbian month. For years, you've been doing regular memorial service for women of the foreign nations, and I hope you will continue to do it. That we don't forget them. What are future plans?
We had up to now, Louise, we had Elsa Clark dressed as Dr. S. Inglis, we had Alan Cumming, and we are continuing. So 6 annual memorial commemorations we had, and I'm so grateful to Father Goran and Milun and Radomir and Dragan, and they all really help a lot, because every time we had the first pomen, Zadošnice in church, and then we have a commemoration in the Great Hall, asking or trying to get more guests. And this is a completely unique event in all United Kingdom. So I think, I hope that it will continue this way. And I'm very grateful to you, Maya, because that's also part of Srpski mjesec kulture. So
to post like that, because there are not so many really of that kind, and it's so important to keep this memory. But we really need your help to continue doing.
Sometimes people ask me, will you do that again next year? And my parents died a long time ago, and every year I remember my parents. And nobody is shocked and surprised to say, but why do you remember them this year? Because you did it last year. So the same question goes, why we should stop this commemoration? And with talking about them, and I hope that next year in February we will have another talk talking particularly about women soldiers.
Yeah.
Whether it will be a virtual event because of Corona and everything, or real, we'll see. But something will be organized again, and I hope we will continue.
Yeah, we are grateful for that. Now tell me, these are the heroines of the that you admire from the past, but who would be your hero nowadays in the present time? Some of your Serbs or British people. Who is your hero?
Oh, okay. I have something here to show you.
There we are, Djokovic, yeah? Novak Djokovic, hero of many.
Novak Djokovic, yes.
Tell us why. You don't have to tell us why, but explain your why. Not just because he's world champion, but other.
I'm not a very sporty person, and I'm not very good at sports, but I enjoy tennis very much. And Novak is not only number one and fantastic tennis player, but fantastic human being. And I'm so happy when he was like, it's my son winning and doing something great. I feel so proud when I can share on my Facebook or follow with somebody else about him. And so I wish him luck, and I really, even I went a few times to Wimbledon to watch the tennis and waited for hours to get over there.
Yeah, many people do, but worthwhile when especially when he wins the Wimbledon, then
Yes.
it's even more worthwhile. But even if he doesn't, we all really support. But what you just said, it's a whole thing. Yes, maybe controversial person Americans or something, but for us Serbs, he really puts our story forward, and that's exactly what you are doing behind the screens, and what many of us are doing behind the screens. He has this opportunity to do a little bit in front lines of the of the battle for our cause, but we are all together, hopefully making some difference as you did, in spite of all the difficulties that we are facing through.
Years ago, just to interrupt for a second, a few years ago, when I usually go to Belgrade, my friend took me to Novak's restaurant. And I know that stealing is not very nice, and it's probably a crime, but I could not.
Now be careful.
I could not resist. So I took this beautiful menu and actually put it on Facebook and everywhere. And there is a Roland Garros cake, and this one, you see, this is Roland Garros.
Delicious.
Yes. So if I can, I would like to go again and to have more of that.
Good. I'm sure that everybody will forgive you for the things. Tell me, when you go to Balkans, because you're from Osijek, are you going back to Osijek at all, or you're going to other places where you like to go in Balkans? What places?
Yes, we try to go every year, if not every year, but every second year. But because of relatives in Bosnia and friends in Belgrade and the graves of my parents in Osijek, I cannot skip Osijek. I have to go there as well. And it usually comes quite challenging to, in 1 week or 10 days, without particular place where you can go, like your grandmother or mom or dad or something. So you have to just travel, and it looks like what we call hodočašće. You are going from point to point, and it's hugely demanding, challenging, difficult. And if you miss one of the cousins, the other, they will be upset and angry. So usually after that holiday, I need another holiday just to relax.
Yeah, I'm sure we all recognize that feeling. After holiday, you need a holiday because it's very busy there. Because we do try to keep in touch with people. Thank you, Zvezdana, very much for this lovely talk. Now, for the end, I would ask you to read us the text that you wrote in 90s called What War Can Do, because I think that will be a lovely conclusion for the path that you passed, and many of us have gone through, and past, present, future, and all that is really reflected in that little story. So please give us the pleasure of hearing it again.
Thank you, ma'am. So this was from one of the courses that I did when I came here, and it's a long road from home. What war can do. Yesterday, I met a friend of mine. 13 years ago, we were on opposite sides of the classroom. We were philosophical about Kafka's Metamorphosis. Yesterday, he said I looked like a dead person. 10 years ago, the clouds were so light, like dreams made of wishes, desires, youth, chocolates, boys, and laughter. Oh God, how I loved everything. Maybe there was something what I couldn't do, maybe not. Knowledge, charm, optimism, open mind, and freedom. These were my weapons, like any other young person's. I really believed in what I was teaching my students and building myself: brotherhood, power of knowledge, equality, peace, forever, humanity. Nothing could spoil my optimism, but the war. 1990 was a very successful year. I got my driving license and I bought a car. After 9 years of temporary work, I got a permanent job at a medical college. I became pregnant and full of sparkling ideas for my future family. 1991 started magnificently when I gave birth to my daughter. In 1991, the war started. In 1991, I lost everything. Perhaps I had died in the bomb shelling in summer 91. Perhaps I had died as an anonymous single mother, refugee in Hungary queuing for food and nappies. Maybe I had been killed by Croat army soldiers together with my optimism. Yesterday, I met a friend of mine. It's raining in Regent's Park. Who am I? The single mother, student, primary helper, housewife. Perhaps I had died 5 years ago. Maybe this is just a life after death. I could have returned as a daisy or ladybird. Yesterday I met. But who cares about yesterday? Completely simple, I want to survive and become a grandmother. To stay alive, to get old, and help my daughter not to lose herself.
That was beautiful and so hopeful. And this is about 30 years after that you wrote.
Yes.
You proved that you were right, that the future is there. Thank you very much for this lovely story and for your interview. And we are really looking forward to see you either virtually or live in February during the Serbian month.
Thank you very much, Maya. Thank you.